right, looks like we're recording, so we'll go ahead and get started. Good morning, everybody. This is our overview of for non-FA staff primarily, but certainly some of our FA staff that joined. If you're excited to see some of the stuff from the students' end in the portal that you haven't been able to really look at yet, welcome. We're happy to have you here as well. Like I said, we're going to do a quick walkthrough of some of the items on the students portal and then what the non-FA staff access to financial aid information is going to look like through something called Advisor Assist, which is one of the tabbed items that is going to be here in the Regent portal. As it is planned right now, and like I said, credentials and security for this are still being configured. But my understanding right now is that the link for production for non-FA staff is going to live in eStaff still. So there'll be a place in there where you can link to it to connect, and then it will be a single sign-on credential once it's configured. So because you will have signed into eStaff, or if you are signed into your work computer, you will be able to just, once you've clicked the link, it'll take you directly into the site and give you the access that you are able to have to the system. There's that. So let's go ahead and dive on in and take a look at a few of the features, and then we're going to talk a little bit about some of the financial aid changes that have come with this FAFSA simplification. It is stuff that we've sent information out about previously, and there is going to be another message for staff going out later today. However, I'll go ahead and update some of you that have joined us here on that as well. All right, so taking a look here, I've got 3 different screens up here, and this is going to allow me to do some different things for you guys. So I want to explain what the 3 screens are. So you see me pivot back and forth between these. You kind of understand what's going on and understand what you're going to see and what you're not going to see. So what you're looking at right now, this is the student portal screen. So I am logged in a test environment as a student in this. We unfortunately are not able to create like fake student credentials in here. So this isn't a QA environment, so I'm not doing anything to affect the student's file, but I did have to grab an actual student to be able to do this. But we are in like I said, a QA environment. This is not the live production environment. We can do whatever we want to this file, and it's not going to impact the student at all. But this is the view of what they will see in their financial aid portal when they log in through the link that will become available in eSanta Fe. The other screens I'm going to be looking at is the staff screen, and this particular staff screen is one that has the access credentials that non-financial aid staff will have into this system. So I've created a credential for myself, but with restricted access in this QA environment, as you can see here, QA instance. And then I will occasionally be flipping to the screen that has my access permissions. I'll need to do this on occasion to show you some things. I might add a document to the student's account to show you what it's going to look like on their end when it's put on. So that's why I have that here. So if I flip over to this, this is not something that you guys are going to see. All right. So we'll start with the staff end. Like I said, I'll send out more details about the exact login procedures because there's still a couple of different decisions that are being made about where that link is going to live for people. But it is likely going to live somewhere in eStaff. I will make sure you get screenshots and whatnot. And so once you're logged into eStaff, you'll be able to click on the link and it'll be a single sign-on link. And because you are logged into eStaff already and authenticated, it should take you directly into the portal. If there's any challenges with that, we will certainly work through those with you. And once you do that, you're going to see this. You're never going to have any tasks or activities here, but this is the dashboard screen that's not able to be removed. But what you are able to do is you have full student search on here. So you can click on student search, and pull up the student search menu here by just clicking that on the left-hand side. You're not going to have any of this stuff. Now, once you find a student, it'll go in your recently viewed, and I'll show you later where you could add a student to your watch list if there was a student you wanted to follow in the application as well. And this is one place you can search. You can use these buttons right here in each of the columns are filters, right? And that allow you to filter for the stuff that's in that column. You can also sort the columns. What I would recommend, obviously, is searching by student ID through this particular function. For our system, it's labeled in their system in Regent as external ID 1 because they can have multiple external IDs for students that need them. In this case, there's a Florida related ID for certain students that have Bright Futures or other Florida aid that we have to put in there. So that's tagged to some students, but external ID 1 in this system, you can see it's for the standard 8-digit student ID here. So this is one place you could search, and you could do that just by filtering a student ID. Whoops. Let's get my sample student's ID real quick and put in my sample student's ID, and I filter it, and it pulls up this student here, and you could click on it and it would bring up their record. Notice every activity that you're doing in here, it's tracking as a tab across the top that you can close. So if you were to open multiple students, you would see multiple tabs across the top here. So you can keep all those students that you're looking at up if you're trying to do comparisons or there's something else you're trying to get. You're going to be able to pull all of that information up right up here. So there is all of that, all right? And then as these files start to come up, you can, I'll show you some of the things that you're going to be able to see. But I do want to first show you another way to search in the system. And so if you were looking to search for a student when you first dropped in here and all you have is this dashboard, notice Maria there went to recently viewed. But if you were to search, you could go to the upper right-hand corner here and you can type in the ID. Let's type it in instead of entering it the way I was doing it, just so you can see what would happen if you didn't have it set up to cut and paste. But you can see as you type stuff in, it's starting to populate a suggestions list of students, and eventually it settles on Maria once you put the full ID in. You could do the same thing by just searching Maria's name, and as you type it in, it's going to start to give you suggestions for what that could be based on what you have typed in. And it is for some reason running a little bit slow. So I typed it wrong. There we go. You can see where it's continuing to bring folks in. So, so that's the other way to search for a student in here. Obviously, your reason for accessing this system is because you are working with a student in some way, and you are trying to get some information on them on financial aid. This is because when we start next award year, 24-25, so what begins in the fall, all those eStaff screens that you already have access to because you wouldn't have been on this list if you didn't, I don't know that they're necessarily going to disappear right away from eStaff. I'm not sure when that stuff's scheduled to be taken down, but what I can tell you is there won't be any information there for 24-25. The MyFA status screens, which are kind of what gives you the view into the current student portal, MyFA status for students, or any of the other screens that you might have access to, which is really just information that feeds into MyFA status and is kind of redundant and just provides a more complicated view of that sort of thing. You know, that's the two different ways to search up a student in here. Makes that super easy to find that student and you know, make sure that you are able to access their information. So now, for some reason, the role here is not restricting properly with the proper permissions. So give me 2 seconds. I just want to make sure that this looks like exactly what you're going to see. So I apologize for that. We have so many different QA environments. It's not always easy to remember where the updates are done. Obviously, in the production version of this, the one that's publicly available, this is already set up this way, but I don't want to give you the impression that that there's going to be access to things that you're not actually going to have access to in this view. So if you'll give me 2 seconds with my apologies, and I will make sure that this looks a little more like what it's going to look like when you actually log into it. So 1 second. I do want to explain that the reason for the access controls, and while I'm sure you've assumed that you've always had less access than, a financial aid staff member would need to process aid, the access controls are even more tight. And some of you may have heard this year with the data, the DDX, the automated transfer directly from the IRS. With that, data in the FAFSA that used to be considered FAFSA data, so data owned by the Department of Education, is now owned by the IRS. And that data has substantially greater legal protections as IRS data does. We're going to have to create some new protocols for how we're going to have to create some new protocols for how we are allowed to share that data among folks, and create some new protocols for what the rules are about that. And so because of that, because of the great restriction on that data, because of all the rules around it, we have to be very careful about who we give access to what. They're particularly concerned about things about like admissions departments at colleges having access to FTI data and being able to use information for recruiting purposes that tells about a family's financial situation, or for advancement purposes, trying to raise money. And so we're starting with a limited form of access that can give you guys some ability to view some of the things that you're likely going to need to be able to view to help a student. And then later we can look at cases where we may be able to potentially expand that access depending on the ability to do that and the legal requirements that allow us or do not allow us to do that. So I just wanted to clarify for that for you guys. It's not that we're trying to keep anything from you, and you should have the things that you need in order to, actually take care of what you need to take care of in terms of helping a student, which is the thing for us that matters the most. I'm trying to get rid of this documents tab because you're actually going to view that in a different place. My apologies again. All right. All right. So here we are. Now this looks a little more like what you're going to see. So again, same search options. You can search up the student using the student search. You can search up the student in the upper right-hand corner. Once you viewed the student once, you can pull them up here. You are going to have this student details menu, which lays out some of the details of information about some of the basics of who they are and what data we've captured for them that comes from the FAFSA, but also primarily data that comes from our student information system. This is pretty basic and nothing that you can't already get in eStaff. So really not particularly useful, but something that we're going to leave here. The big thing that you guys are going to have access to is this Advisor Assist tab. And what the Advisor Assist tab is it's a live view on this end of what the student's dashboard looks like. So when this loads up, this will bring you right into what the student is seeing in their portal, which is really the best way to work with a student on these matters, right? The best way to work with students on these items is going to be to see what it is they're seeing, because a lot of times it's just a matter of you pointing out something that they're not noticing or not understanding and clarifying it for them, rather than it is really you answering some sort of financial aid question for them, right? Because really, if it comes down to a real financial aid question, you need to refer them to our office and the normal channels in our office through either coming into the office, email, making a phone call through the main number or whatever it may be. But they need to come see us for that kind of stuff. So on this portal, I just want to show you that, you're going to have access to view everything that they can. And the only thing you really can't do in here is take actions on the student's behalf, which is why I have the sample portal pulled up, because we are actually going to want to take some actions on the student's behalf to be able to take care of some things. But you can see here that their main dashboard has several boxes on it that kind of mirror the left-hand side. So the left-hand side will give them more details and more display of these items. But right now, their communications are here. That's on the left-hand side. They only have 3. They show all 3 here. But if they had 6, for instance, they wouldn't be able to see all of them here. Documents, so anything they might need to submit or deal with. Their financial aid, which would be their actual financial aid package. Satisfactory academic progress. Something called My Plan, which we'll talk about later, and some useful links, which is something that we'll be expanding. But this is just links to items that might be important for them to access for financial aid information. That all does appear right here on their dashboard for them as well. So let's walk through a few of the other things that you can see here. And then a little bit, I'm going to go add some documents to this student that for this student, wouldn't necessarily be automatically triggered by some of the automations, but are documents that I want to show you. So I'm going to throw them on the student's account for funsies, and we can go in and take a look at them. So we'll start with communications. So this is the communications view here. I want to show you again. This looks exactly like the actual student portal when they're logged in, except you just have this frame around it where you could be pulling up several different students. So we'll do it from their dashboard side. So communications, wants me to sign back in because my session expired. All right. We'll come back to that in a second. We'll look at it here. I'm not sure why that's not working. The production version of this actually does function. It's been tested numerous times, but once again, when you have multiple QA type environments, QA servers are generally not high priority and tend to run a little slower, which is fine. So we'll see what we can do to figure out what's going on with that, but we can still look at the student stuff. So here we go. So these are the communications that they have. You go to the communications menu. These are notifications that they would have gotten. Notifications from this system not only go to their Santa Fe email, but they also will be sent a notification via text for all of the notification items if they are opted in at the school for texting. So if at the school, on their admissions application, they opted in for texting, they will get a text message as well with these notifications. This is the first one that's gone out recently. This is the additional information is needed message, which tells them, hey, we've got some documents or something that we need to complete your financial aid. The message will actually tell them specifically what it is that they're missing. And then they are able to, through a link directly from this email, go in and access that. Financial aid package, right? This is a message telling them that there may be actions that are required for their particular financial aid items to be completed, things that they might have to accept or decline, information about what may change their eligibility. So that, they may have an award on here for a Pell Grant that's right now estimated at full time, but then we get their actual enrollment and their half-time and that gets reduced, whatever. Or another whatever factor would be they have the Pell Grant and then they don't attend that class they're enrolled in. Well, until they have attendance, it doesn't account for eligibility and some of the normal things about that. But you can see the actual message that was sent to them from the financial aid department. Again, this is them, getting the additional information message. So you can see that this was sent on the 23rd. It wasn't really sent because this is a QA environment, but it was sent on the 23rd. Some of these messages have different parameters for the frequency with which they are automatically sent. In this particular case, this message that they're missing documents is sent every day, every 7 days for a month, and then stops sending. So that's that. If the student had portal messages, meaning an FA staff member had gone in here and we had reviewed one of their documents they submitted or something, and we need to directly send them a message, this is where they would view those as well. So you can see messages directly from the financial aid office here as well. And then we go to the documents section. There will eventually be some documents that the student can add themselves, request for things like professional judgment, and some of the items that they're able to do through us that they can opt in for themselves. And then there's the documents here that they need in needed status. This item is just instructions on where to go to complete the direct loan entrance counseling. So there is a link that will take them where to go. This is a QA environment before the language on this got updated. So there's not an actual live link here. It's just the studentloans.gov, but that's a defunct site. There's stuff that's been updated, like I said, an old QA environment. But the point about this is this document has been posted automatically because the student's been offered loans. And it's giving them the opportunity to go out to the federal site to complete the loan entrance counseling they're required to complete, the master promissory note they're required to complete. And then what happens on the back end is once they've completed that, there's a file that we get from the federal government that then automatically goes in overnight and satisfies these documents once they're done. So they will be satisfied on the student's end and done. And then they will be able to move on with their loans that are, once these required documents are complete. You'll notice at the top there are status sections. If something doesn't seem to be right, I always recommend going and clicking the show all documents because there might be something in one of these other categories that's not showing because it's by default showing needed documents. And you'll see here, there's a standard document on here that is for the requirement that they have high school completion. And this document gets posted for everybody, but it gets auto-satisfied for those who have demonstrated through the admissions process that they have high school completion. But if they didn't, this document would be sitting out here as needed for them, and it's going to tell them that records from the admissions office indicates that a high school completion status that is not eligible for federal financial aid. And some statuses allow you to be admitted, but are not eligible for financial aid. To submit proof of completion, correct your status, contact the admissions office. So this is here for everybody, but auto-satisfied for those we already have, and a reminder for those that aren't. So that's what you get with that show all documents. There are hundreds of different documents that could be in here. So these are what was already on the student's account. So I'm just kind of showing you the basic idea of documents. We're not going to go through every permutation of everything that a student could possibly have on their account. That's not really the purpose of today. But I did want to make sure that you were able to see this. In a minute here, there is one important document that some of your students may end up with that I want to talk to you a little bit about because it's new this year, and I will add it to her account so that we can go in and look at it. But we'll do that in a minute. We're going to go here to financial aid. And this is where she would see her financial aid offer, except for, and there will be an updated note for this for students when this goes live. It's already in place in the live environment, but they first have to complete this My Borrowing Plan. So when they go in to complete the My Borrowing Plan, this is really cool. This is one of our favorite features of Regent. Notice the very, very first option, idea, suggestion to them is that they decline loans. We're not saying they have to decline loans. They're fine if they want to have their loans, but the very first thing they see is this option to decline their loans, right? And otherwise, it gives them two potential plan options here that are package all available aid or exclude unsubsidized loans if they're not going to be offered loans that are, if they don't want to take out the loans that aren't, where the interest is not subsidized by the federal government. In this case, it looks like the student's not eligible for unsubsidized loans, so the package is basically the same. So it doesn't really matter, right? They're only getting subsidized loans in this case. So let's just say that this student, we're not going to decline loans in this case for our test example, because this student would have no other aid from what it appears like. So let's look at this other borrowing plan, right? It's using their estimated direct costs, which is, the tuition and fees for the year, based on 12 credit hours a term, for fall and spring. Looking some other estimated costs, that's the rest of the financial aid cost of attendance. And then when you scroll down here, once they select the plan, it's going to give them the option to adjust any award amounts that they might have. They can actually specify a lesser amount if they want to borrow, if they wanted to borrow exactly $500, right? That's fine. They can put that in there. So they can decrease and increase and add and remove their loans for perpetuity until they disperse. So it's going to give them a lot of control of their borrowing. I know this is going to take a minute to refresh here. And once it does, though, they never have to do that again until next year. So every year they're going to have to go in and look at their borrowing plan. It is part of a state requirement to meet this requirement for this debt letter that we're required to provide students. But this meets it and then some, because what it's going to show them is this My Plan now. It's going to look at the academic plan for their program of study that they've entered into, how much they have left, what their estimated cost of enrollment is, how much they would need to borrow if they borrow at the same rate over the course of that program, and then is even going to recommend to them what they would end up paying in a monthly payment over a 10-year repayment plan with a 5.5 interest rate to repay that loan. So, so I kind of messed this up with the 500 piece there, but the point is if they are estimating that they're going to borrow $3,000 a semester and their program is going to take them 4 semesters to complete, it's going to project a real student loan payment down here. So when they're done, it's going to project out for them over the course of it. Well, if you borrow like you're borrowing now, you're going to end up borrowing $20,000. And so here's what your monthly federal loan payment will look like when you get out of school every month if you do take out that financial aid package. This is a really cool thing for our students because it's going to allow them to see into the future a little bit, and tell them what the real impact of that money that they're borrowing is before they're able to really see any of their financial aid offers. And so, oh, the student does have Pell Grant. Okay, so now that we've done their My Plan, they're able to see here. It looks like it's still refreshing a little bit because it's got to update all that plan information and repackage the student. Let's see if it's done now. Yes. Okay. So now they have an aid package, right? Because it's showing what their active active plan is, package all aid available, what their current borrowing is, right? It's showing their Pell Grant offer and that it's been accepted, and it's showing them the details of how that breaks down, fall, spring, summer awards, based on how it's projected out for them to receive that money. It's showing them Right now, it's showing them a federal supplemental educational opportunity grant. We're not going to be packaging that in this first go round, but it is then showing also their loan amounts. So that $5,000 for the year broken up over fall and spring. You can see here they can make changes where they can go ahead and take the full amount if they want. They can go and decline it, right? They can change this specific amount again. So let's go ahead and say that they're going to take the full amount now, right? Oh, I'm in here for this student. Okay, got to go back to the, anyway, we won't mess with that again. So point being that there's a lot of different options for the student for them to have information, and then they can go in and see their financial aid package. The satisfactory academic progress screen just gives them information about their satisfactory academic progress what the policy requirement is, what their specific standards are. This student doesn't have any yet, so they are right now considered satisfactory. And then at the end of the term, when we update it, this will be updated and they can see all of that information here. Useful links. Again, the My Plan piece of this, which we've already talked about pretty extensively. And then, back to their dashboard. So when we get a little further along here, when iteration 3 of this system is live, which is the disbursement part of the system, there's going to be additional links that'll be added alongside here for additional systems that they may be able to access. And then you're going to have access to that same amount of information for the student when you do that. So all in all, that's kind of the walkthrough here. While I put on an additional document for her for something that I would like to show you guys, I wanted to find out if there were any questions. I don't know if I missed anything in the chat. Obviously, when I'm displaying things, it's hard to see the chat. No, nothing in the chat. Is there anyone that wants to unmute and ask some questions about what you've been able to see from the student side of things and the staff level access that you guys will have? Just feel free to unmute and toss it out there.
Hey, Colin, this is Jelena from the Contact Center. So I do
Yes,
have
ma'am.
a few questions for you.
Sure.
So my first question is, how does this differ from Pro Verifier? Like, what are the new pros, cons? Does that completely go away? Because I know
Well,
we've been using Pro Verifier for verification. Now
yeah.
removing certificates. So how does
ProVerifier
that?
was just for verification. This is
Okay.
replacing MyFA status. So this is
Oh,
the entire student portal. So this is something entirely different. This is their access to our backend system. So other than some processes that have to remain in eStaff, we will be processing aid in the production staff version of Region Award. That's where we'll be doing all our work for processing aid, and the student will see it through this Region Education student portal that I just showed you. So this is replacing eStaff for the most part for our staff for financial aid processes, and this is
mhm.
replacing MyFA status for the student.
Okay.
Now they're going to access it in the same way. It's going to be a link under finances. It'll say financial aid portal for now. That's because we have to leave MyFA status because MyFA status is for the 20 is still used for summer right now, 23-24 award year. And so this will be going live in the 20, or well, I mean, it's going to be live for them on Monday. Based on, everything looking good right now, like it is, this will be live for them on Monday. And they'll have that financial aid portal link that they'll be driven to log in. So this is where they will see their information, and Advisor Assist is how staff outside of financial aid will see the students' information to help advise them about what they may need to be able to do.
Okay, perfect. You answered the second question. And so verification will still work the same or with the new
Verification
FAFSA?
is no longer going to be through ProVerifier. We are bringing it
Okay.
back in-house because the number of verification selections are so low at this point that
Mm-hmm.
there's no point in outsourcing it. It's just not an expense that's worth going to.
Mm-hmm.
And additionally, this system, I mean, the old system allowed us to do it too, but this system will allow us to do that. If we literally have now, granted, I think we're still waiting to get some additional ICERs from the federal government. I mean, there's some things, right? But right now we have like 12 students that are selected for verification with the files that we have, right?
Perfect.
And so I can maybe show you, I think, and this is a good question because that's a system that we're moving away from. But yes, Pro Verifier as a separate
Mm-hmm.
system. I know this feels kind of like that because it's like, oh, it's a web page and it's not, contained directly inside our system. But this is partially replacing that, but and that is going away from the student perspective. And we're going to be reviewing verifications on our end, but this is also replacing MyFA status. So that's what I want to be very clear. Let me find someone
Okay.
that has a full verification. All right, I got a student here. So let me just to show you, because this will allow me to show you guys some additional documents too. So this is another student, and this student has been selected for federal verification. And so when I go to Advisor Assist for them, they go to their documents section, and instead of the other stuff that the other student had, you can see they have a verification worksheet. They have student W-2s because the student was a non-filer, and they have a parent or spouse tax return transcripts that's been posted for them, right? And so these, when you go into them, will give them instructions on what they need to do to complete them, and provide the information and upload it. And then Jerry, our verification specialist, will be the one reviewing the verifications rather than staff at ProVerifier.
Okay, perfect. So you answered my second question about how this is impacting my FA status. My next question is, because we get a lot of times we are the first point of contact for students calling in for financial aid assistance. So with this going live on Monday, and you're saying that it still has to be configured for accessing eStaff. What is
that is my understanding. Now, you guys are a large consideration on that point. So, I want to be clear that we are thinking about that. That part of it, the access control piece of it is not something I have control of. But we want this to live in a protected environment. I know, obviously is my share still up? Are you still seeing the screen? Okay, it just didn't have the box around it. Okay. Obviously we know that, we have this like employee resources section here. The sensitive nature of this data, and from an audit perspective, this can't live here. The link to this, even if you have to authenticate to get into it. So we're trying to think through the best way to have it protected and be available for you. Here's what I'll do though. We'll make sure you have the production link, and it is just a URL. If I have to email it to you guys to start, right? You know what I mean? We'll make sure it's taken care of, but that's a good question. And I got a note about that for you. So,
and so one last question for you as of right now. Because we've already been getting calls about 24-25. So just want to make sure we try to help you guys as much as possible, but also making sure that we communicate the best we can with students. So this is probably not anything that you can answer right now. Maybe think about it, because I know you said there's a lot of state and federal changes. So if you could please kind of let us know on our end, from what we know, what the processes were as of 23-24, how that changes for 24-25, and in terms of how we inform students of their next processes and what to do. So if you could work on that for us, that would be great. So that way we
do you
can
guys get the update emails that I send? I
we
sent
get those. We get those.
They're
But
not
I
as
know,
detailed on some of these items. I just wanted to make sure you're getting that because that's a good starting point. I did want to
yeah,
let
we're getting those. But I know now with this, it kind of changes a few things. So just kind of something to think about, so that
For
way we
sure.
can
For
communicate
sure.
in the same info.
I do want to let everyone know that obviously web updates are down right now. We all know that. But prior to that going down, we, as much as possible, did a very quick overhaul of certain pages on the financial aid web pages. So there are several areas where a lot of the stuff that has been changed has been updated on our pages. But I can make a point to highlight some of that information. Some of it is things where, the school has to make some decisions about how they're implementing those federal policies, and some of those decisions are still being made. So, I mean, there are some things on that, but as we know that information, that update process will be a way that continues to get shared. But we can certainly include some more details on that for anyone that would want it. So, yeah. And we'll make sure we work on that from an access perspective. There is, like I said, one more document item that I wanted to show everybody, because it is part of a big change for this year, but it's part of the reason why this system actually, not this system per se, although I think the system is, but it's part of the reason why additionally that that all of this is a pretty big win for our students. And it's something that is called provisional independent. And I'm thinking that okay, yeah. And let me see if I can find a student with provisional independent. And so this student, so I can show it to you. Provisional independent is a process whereby what used to happen is, so we have these students that have these situations where they can't provide their parental information on the FAFSA. So for the FAFSA, and it's even stricter this year because of the fact that we have the contributor model now, meaning each contributor, the parents, the spouse, if the student is married, has to have their own FSA ID to log in to be able to contribute their federal tax information to the FAFSA. And because of that, it's even tighter who is a parent. It's really easy for the federal government to identify that. A parent, because a parent for the FAFSA is only the student's biological or adopted parents. Even if they are in a court-ordered guardianship or whatever it may be, for the FAFSA, that's all it is. And so what do we do about the students that can't get that information, where it's unsafe to contact those people? They have no way of contacting those people. They don't know where they are. They're deceased, whatever it may be. And the process used to be something called dependency override. And what they would have to do is submit the FAFSA without the parent information, even though by answering the questions, it says they're dependent, they have to send it in anyway. And it's technically a rejected FAFSA. Now we still get it, but it tells them it's rejected. And then we might have to do some proactive outreach, or they may have to figure out that it's rejected and why, and contact the school that they're going to go to and go through this dependency override process where they can document that they have a special circumstance that allows them to submit the FAFSA as if they were an independent and not factor in their parents' information. Well, now they've gone to something called provisional independent. What the student is able to do is they are able to click a button on the FAFSA that says, I have an unusual circumstance that allows that prevents me from either safely contacting my parents or finding my parents to get their information for the FAFSA. And then it comes into us not rejected, but in this provisional independent status, and we're able to give the student estimated awards. It calculates an SAI, which is the new EFC for them. So it gives them the number and we can show them that. And then what happens is we post a document to their account in an automated way, which proactively tells them, hey, you have to provide us some documentation of this unusual circumstance that you have to contact your parent, that you can't contact your parents or you can't get your parental information for the FAFSA. So it assumes that if they've checked that box, they're going to be able to provide that documentation, and at least it lets us give them an award package and encourage them to come to school, right? Instead of rejected, it shows, oh, wow, you're going to get a $3,000 semester Pell Grant. It might be worth going and gathering that documentation now to be able to come here and take advantage of this opportunity. And so that would be a document that's posted on the students portal. I'm having a little trouble getting it to post. Once again, QA environments are finicky. They are by their nature, not the complete environment. And I can't do all this stuff in the live production environment because we're making changes to student files, and I can't really, pretend to be a specific student in that system. So, but what I'm telling you is this provisional independent thing is awesome. It's a huge win for our students that are in these really weird circumstances, or really difficult circumstances where they can't get this parental information. We're proactively telling them, hey, just provide us this documentation and here's the financial aid award you can get, estimated, already in the system for you. So I wanted to make sure I covered that with everyone because that's kind of one of the bigger changes to a process that used to be a little more difficult. Otherwise, I just want to open it up again for questions for everybody. The main thing is I wanted you just to be able to visualize this, see what you're going to have access to, see the basics of searching. The rest of this is pretty intuitive, what you're able to go through, and it gives you all of the information you're going to need to be able to help the students. And just like my FA status, this all feeds from other screens that we in the FA office have that it's all coming from there. So the information is coming from a valid source. So this is not a situation where by those other screens being hidden, you don't have anything. What it is you just don't have the more complicated version of it. This is the version that's distilled down for non-FA folks. And this will really allow you to get in there and go, let's take a look and see what we can figure out for you, and get you headed in the right direction. So, yeah. Any additional questions before we close things up here? Angelina, thank you for the questions there. Those were all some excellent points, most of which we've already considered, but I'm glad we were able to get the answers for you. And we'll share this out. So,
Colin, I have a quick question.
yes, ma'am.
When you were looking at that one student's information and you mentioned you saw that SEOG and said that for
Yeah.
right now you're packaging those here.
Yes.
Where will we be able to see outside of federal aid what other scholarships they have awarded in the system?
You're only
right
going to
now?
see what's awarded, so you're going to be seeing what we see. We're not
Okay.
what we're able to package on Monday, and I'm going to be sending out later today my next broad staff update and the student one tomorrow on Friday to prepare them for Monday. All right, but what we're saying is that for Monday, we are going to be providing a financial aid package that includes the two major, the major sources of financial aid for most students at the college, which are the federal Pell Grant and then federal student loans. Those are the only two items that we'll be able to package at this point. We will be able to, by fall, package everything that we need to package. But right now, the additional scholarship information is not being imported into the system, and those other programs are still being configured, such as state stuff and some of the ancillary federal programs like FSEOG. So the aid packages that students will have available to them on Monday are the two primary sources of federal aid that are, the pretty much the exclusive source of aid for, a large percentage of our students. Bright Futures, obviously we're waiting for Regent to finish configuring and programming the Florida aid, but also we normally don't have, for new students, we normally don't have fall availability or fall eligibility for those students until July anyway. We wouldn't be posting the Bright Futures Awards until end of July anyway, because we don't have the information from the state about who's eligible. So while that's technically, not going to be here, that's normal that's not going to be here. So a lot of this stuff, a lot of the delays with some of this stuff is about the federal government not providing specifications to the vendors to program these things until much, much, much later in the process. Us being able to get Pell and loans packaged for students at the beginning of June. We just came back from the FAFSA conference, and we're probably a couple of weeks ahead of a lot of schools right now. Some schools are packaging their aid depending on what system they're using. But right now, a lot of schools are very much in this same boat of, they're not packaging returning students yet, or they're not, there's a lot of delays out there that have been created by some of the initial frustrations around this process. So. Any other questions? That's a great question. I appreciate it, Andrea. All right. Well, like I said, this was our walkthrough, but we are to answer some other questions about some things that are changing. Expect later today, again, an update like the other ones that I've been sending out, but with some additional details and some access to some resources as well, where for those of you that like to take a deeper dive into some of this stuff, you'll be able to do that. This will give you the basic behind the scenes overview. If any of you come up with questions after this, feel free to reach out to me if they're kind of general questions about the system or about the student experience. If they're questions about a particular student's financial aid file after go live on Monday, again, those students should be referred to the financial aid contact page and sent through the normal contact channels, which is to come into the office, send an email, make a phone call, or schedule a phone appointment, so that the service team can actually handle those student inquiries. So I appreciate everybody. Have a good one.